Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about self. And I know a lot of us don't like talking about self, but we're doing it today. We're talking about self awareness, we're talking about self leadership, and we're also talking about something that I've never heard of, and it's called the clean mirror concept. And here to step into self, Jay Graves is here. How are you, Jay?
Crystal, I am doing wonderful. Can't complain. I'm so glad to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Jay, where in the world are you?
So I'm currently located in Houston, Texas. We've been here since 2013. I'm really a North Carolina guy, but now Texas has become home.
You got to Texas as soon as possible, right?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. So, self. A lot of people don't like talking about self, Jay, but you have just like thrown yourself into this concept. And for myself and for my community, we all say thank you. So my first question for you, Jay, how would you personally define self leadership?
Crystal, that is a great question. I get that question a lot. So, one of the ways that I define self leadership is becoming self aware of your own tendencies, becoming aware of both your strengths and what you may perceive as your opportunities, and also becoming aware of how this plays out when you interact with other people. So, self leadership is all of that awareness in being able to be intentional, knowing what you know when you interact, when you lead, when you communicate with other people.
How does someone know or become aware of those things?
That's an excellent question. It's not always the easiest thing to do. One of the things that I take people through this exercise, and it's called knowing yourself to lead yourself. And we begin the exercise just talking about defining what is a tendency? What are some of the things that you feel you grew up with, things that you do, and maybe you are unconsciously competent at these things. You're not even aware that you do them. And we start listing these things off. And it could be, I tend to be very, I take the lead every time I get an opportunity, or I'm very non confrontational, or I like for things to be very creative and all of these different things. And we start going down this list. And most of the time, people say things that are very positive. But then whenever I say, oh, that's a beautiful list, I then turn and say, what are some things you think that you do and who you are that you're not as proud of? And we go down this whole list of things that they seem to struggle with or they're not as proud of. And I always remind them, lots of times we are made who we are by nurture or nature. Our parents raised us a certain way. So you grow up with a certain mindset. And sometimes in order to deal with life as it hits you hard, you begin to adapt and you begin to become what you need to become in order to move forward or deal with what you're dealing with.
How, Jay, did you get into this space about learning, obviously, and teaching and coaching about self leadership and self awareness?
Good question. So I will tell you now, I have years of experience in L&D, learning and development. So in a previous job, I spent a lot of time in training and development, and I absolutely loved it. The good thing about training and development for me is I get to be in a room full of people, and I get to see this light bulb go off. So I remember the first time I started training on emotional intelligence. And I remember how my own light bulb went off. And I thought to myself, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I learned it. And all of a sudden, I just kept going deeper and deeper into it. And I started talking the language. And next thing you know, it's like everything I did, I was considering emotional intelligence within that. So that's how I started out doing this. And I was training people and teaching people. And I used it a lot in my leaderships as I began to get new teams, and I'm becoming a manager, a director. And now I'm realizing how important this is, because in order to drive my team, in order for my team to perform, in order for my team to feel valued, I needed to know how to communicate with them. I needed to be aware of who I was and who they are in order to help them to be the best them that they could be.
Oh, that's good. So I'm not going to say by accident, but you just kind of happen to be in this training space
Yes,
and
yes,
your, as I call it, Oprah's aha moment, but your light bulb went off to, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
yes, yes. It did. Have you ever heard someone say more is caught than taught? Well, it so
No, but I
happened.
love that.
So it just so happened to be I'm in a place, and here's what we're doing for the staff at this particular role that I was in, and I learned it so that I could train it, but I ended up learning it so that I could live it. So it was the most amazing thing ever.
Wow. Okay, so Jay, what would you say is the biggest myth, and I'm sure there's several, about people with leadership within themselves?
You know, I think one of the biggest myths that I've seen people do is that they assume that their strengths are all transferable, and everybody recognizes that they are the strong leader because they're decisive, they're outspoken, they're loud, they do things on purpose. And so, from a leadership perspective, we don't realize that that's our perception of what we do, but it's not necessarily how others perceive us. Because without regulation, your decisiveness and your passion could be perceived as dominance or control
Or aggressive?
or aggressive. Exactly.
You know what? This is what I always say, Jay, and then I'm gonna go to my next question.
Okay.
Just because you are loud does not mean you are correct.
Ooh, I love that.
Yes.
Lots of times too, and before you go to your next statement, to tag along with that, I realize that when people lack feedback, they assume what they've done is correct. And so in turn, this is why it's so important to build relationship so that you can give feedback so that people can become aware. You know that little thing that you do? Don't do that no more. Here's what this comes across as.
Yes.
And because no one does that, people go throughout their entire lives thinking, I must be good. Nobody told me I was bad.
But how do you handle it if somebody tells you that you're bad? Like,
Well, it,
that's the question. That's like the issue. If I tell you you're wrong, if I
mhm.
tell you you're bad, are you going to give me the silent treatment?
Yeah, unfortunately, some leaders are. Some leaders are going to give you the silent treatment. Some leaders are actually going to bite your head off. Some leaders are actually going to just not believe you and dismiss you.
Yes.
And that's the unfortunate part when you don't have high EQ and you don't realize that feedback is a gift, and you don't realize that hey, this person is trying to help me, not harm me. This is why becoming self aware is super important so that you can take the feedback in a way that benefits you, not in a way that you feel is cutting you down or dismissing you.
Jay, how does someone balance between self discipline and self compassion?
Oh, that's really, really good. You know what? I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I've heard Dr. Darius Daniels say this. More of anything means more of everything.
Okay.
So to the front side of something, there's always a backside to something. So anything unregulated can become a monster within itself, even though it's a good thing. So self discipline is a good thing and it's necessary to grow. But I will tell you that if you are not careful, your self discipline now becomes something that was never meant to be. And then when moments of compassion, speaking on compassion, when that comes into play, if you wind up and you are showing yourself being compassionate and you have that ability to give that, but you don't have an ability to regulate and monitor that, you actually do the very opposite of what you're intending to do. So in all of this, I would say, Crystal, I don't know if you've ever, there's a concept called being aligned versus being broken or fractured.
I haven't
When
heard.
when you are self-disciplined the right way, we say that you're aligned with everything else that goes on in your life. But when you are not, when you're self-disciplined and you're only focused on being self-disciplined, and that is your main thing, and you don't consider everything around that, you become fractured. And
I
so the
get
key
that.
Exactly. So the key means I've got to be aligned with everything going around me. So not just about what you're doing, but how this impacts everybody around you. That makes you align, and you become aware, and then you can regulate.
Wow, I literally just got that. That was
Okay.
good. You are good, Jay.
Oh,
You are
Crystal.
good. I know, right? I know. Okay, so Jay, what are some daily habits that my community, my audience can start implementing now that will help them become and stay a strong leader in their everyday life?
I'm so glad you asked that question. One of the things that I do is everyone should have their circle.
Okay.
And what I mean by their circle, you should have a group of people, a trusted group of people around you that will give you healthy challenge, that will give you honest feedback, that will also be able to pour into you. This is what helps me to stay self-aware. They
Hmm.
keep me, I don't want to use the term humble, but they definitely keep me honest. And the reason this is important is because when you have a circle, you got to be aware that when there's no longer any challenge, there's no longer any healthy feedback, when it seems that it's kind of leveled out, it's time for a new circle. And you got to find another circle. Most people that I know don't have any circle whatsoever, or their group of friends just don't challenge them. They never get feedback. They keep them in a comfort zone, right? So there's no growth there. And the truth of the matter is, anything that's not challenged will not grow. So you need to find a place where you can have healthy tension so that you can actually grow. So I would tell everyone, find some people or get some people in your life who are not afraid to challenge you. Find some people who are not afraid to give you healthy feedback and that you won't be offended by, which means that you trust them. So someone you have a relationship with. And then find some people that have your best interests at heart. That's one of the ways that I stay self-aware, by keeping people around me who are honest. That way they could help me see me when the mirror is foggy. You know, because sometimes the mirror is foggy and it's hard to see, and I'm wiping it off. They are for sure there to say, I'll tell you what's going on. And I appreciate that.
Yes, yes. Staying on the topic of self awareness, Jay, what does it mean for someone to truly know themselves?
Good. Um, Great question, Crystal. I would say for someone to truly know themselves, it means that you now are not walking in fear of the things that you've been told and how you have perceived yourself in the past. So imagine this. For someone to truly know themselves, they actually have to step back of what everybody has told them. Step back from what your parents said you were, step back from what your teacher said you were, step back from even what you said you were. Take an honest step back and take an objective look at, hey, here's what I do. Whether I like it or not, this is just what's natural for me. And it may not be good or bad, but when you take that objective look at, here's actually what I do, you're looking at something that you can measure, looking at something that is measurable, meaning that I'm not taking a subjective thing and this is good or bad. This is just what I do. Here are my thoughts. Here's how I have been approaching this. I get offended when someone gives me feedback, or I hate people who are overconfident. They're arrogant, and all these natural things that you can identify, to yourself. You can then say, okay, now I know this, but that's only the first part, Krista, because knowing this means that now what am I going to do about
That was going to be my follow up question.
it?
Yes.
Yeah, knowing this is the first step. The second step to doing this is like, okay, I have a certain mind pattern now that's causing me to use this tendency and respond in a certain way. So if you think about it, look at this from here's a tendency, something that I do. And if I leave that, it makes me think a certain way. And because I think a certain way, I will then respond or react in a certain way. So I always tell people, it's not so much changing your tendencies, but change your way of thinking in your response. Something should trigger you that and I'll be a little facetious here, that when someone approaches you a certain way, your mind is thinking, you better cuss them out. Well, what I'm saying to you is, don't deny that you feel like cussing them out, but realize if you cuss them out, you're going to create a certain consequence. So before I physically cuss you out, I then begin to stop. And then I may start doing things like, hey, I'm unclear about the question that you just made. Can you clarify that for me so that I can respond appropriately? And all of a sudden, the very thing that you was getting ready to cuss them out about, you realize they just came at you left, but they didn't know how to say the question the right way. Mm-hmm. So it came across offensive, but really they have a legitimate ask of you. And this happens when you are intentional. So you don't change who you are, but you do monitor and regulate how you respond. And that's the key to self-awareness.
You know what I was thinking about? I seen this a meme on social media, and of course you can't trust everything you see on social media.
I know, right?
But this was funny. This one said, being mature, self-aware means that what that person said was actually true and correct about you, mm-hmm. but maybe their attitude was bad when they said it.
That's exactly it. So, the good thing about being self-aware to go along with that is that once you start looking past your own assumptions,
yes.
then you can ask questions to make sure that you don't assume the wrong thing.
Yes.
And so now it's like, oh, that was crazy what they asked me, but before I react, let me ask a few questions.
Right.
Oh, that's what you meant, And maybe their tone was bad. Maybe their tone was wrong. But if you then give them that feedback after you answer that question, that may help them to become more self-aware.
Right.
Because I've had to do that before myself. Like, oh, I get it. You kind of threw me off when you said it because it came across borderline offensive. But I realized you were asking this. Man, I got to work on myself. And I've done that before, and people were like, oh, I wasn't trying to offend you at all. And, I questioned if that was the case or not. But, I was able to really speak to them about that without cussing them out.
You say without cussing them out. I love it. But, once you get past your feelings, you realize that what they said or the question that they asked, the feedback that they gave you was actually factual and correct.
Yes. And that's all a part of being self-aware and being mature.
It is.
I tell my kids that all the time. The crazy thing, my kids play sports, mm-hmm. and they listen to all of their coaches. But sometimes when it comes to listening to dad, they kind of question, because they assume that I don't want their best, but their coach does. Yeah. And so I have to help them to realize, I'm telling you the right thing to do. The very same thing your coach told you to do, but you did it when your coach did it, but you questioned me. And I have to help them to think through that concept. And they're like, you know what? He's
right. Right. When did you realize, Jay, or when did you figure out, and this is me assuming that you figured this out, so, it's a leading question. When did you figure out that being honest with yourself was more important than being impressive to others?
Man, I can't tell you how much I love that question, because I can identify with that. When I figured out it was more important for me to be honest with myself versus impressing others.
Yes.
When I realized impressing others was getting too painful for me to endure. So a little transparency here. One of my tendencies growing up, I grew up in a household where it was the rules of the house. My father was very strict, great man, ex-military, and it was his way or the highway. So I didn't often have a voice. So in turn, compliance was what was needed. So in turn, there's this element now of people pleasing that I kind of grew up with, trying to make everything right. If it was asked of me, I'm gonna do everything I can to make that happen. And the problem is when you people please, you can do that to a certain extent for a certain time that drains you, and it starts to kill who you are. And there's a concept called bottling. It's where when people please, they're non-confrontational, they don't confront people about their issues, they begin to put their frustration in a bottle and just let it stay there. The problem with that is sooner or later, this top pops off the bottle and everything comes out. And whoever's in front of me, instead of getting the nice Jay, you get the Incredible Hulk. And you're thinking, hey, what's all this hostility coming from? But it was because I didn't know how to regulate my emotions and become self-aware. And so that's when I realized I can't keep doing this. I've got to be honest with myself.
Yes.
So in my case, instead of being non-confrontational, I had to find a way to confront. And that's what I did. And I had to confront in real time. And that was a challenge for me because that's not how it's naturally built. So it's that whole thing. is my tendency to be non-confrontational. My
Right.
mind didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but now I got to do it. If not, I'm going to suffer in the end. So that's how that looked.
How do you keep yourself honest without slipping into being overly self-critical?
Well, I will be honest with you here, Crystal. That's not always easy.
Okay.
And, and it's
It doesn't
depending.
sound like it, even as I'm saying it.
Yeah, it's not always easy, and depending on how we're set up, how we're wired, how I'm wired, how myself, how I'm wired, I have found it to be difficult, and I have help with that. And so when I say I have help, luckily for me, I married this amazing woman who we've been married 26 years this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And we've kind of grown together, and she has helped me to stay honest with myself and not be overly critical. She's recognized that when I'm overly critical of myself, I approach things almost in a. Have you ever heard the term when someone has a failure to launch because they're trying to make it perfect, and but they don't want to mess up because if they mess up, they procrastinate. You know, because like, man, I want to do this. I feel like
Yes.
I don't have enough
Yes.
information, but I need to do it. But wait, I got to get it just right.
Yes.
Well, that was me. And I needed somebody else to tell me, pull the trigger already. Quit being overcritical of yourself. And this is my example. Go ahead. It won't come out right. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but you'll be better off from doing it versus you thinking that it's not going to be good enough. So I needed someone else in my ear to help me do that. Again, a part of my circle. So that
Hmm.
was my own experience, having somebody who is aware that I can be very self-critical, which causes me to procrastinate. And then I'm slow to launch, not because I don't want to do it. I'm not lazy. I'm just trying to perfect it because I don't want to get it wrong. What are people going to think if I get it wrong? And then she said, well, the truth of the matter is no matter what you do, somebody's not going to like it. And eventually
That
that
is
helped me to
true.
say, you know what? Even if I get it wrong, I can always fix it. And I'm really good at these other areas here. So if I get it wrong, I'll do this and do this. And I started getting out of my own head, is what I say.
How long did it take you to receive that feedback from your wife? Because obviously, in this, setup, you are the expert. To me, I consider you an expert in this situation. You're a
Mm-hmm.
coach, you consult in this area. So, as the expert, how long did it take you to receive that information from your wife? And did you receive it in a positive manner the first time she said it?
That last part, fact. No, I did not receive it in a positive manner the first time she said it. The first time she said it was before I went through any type of emotional intelligence training.
Okay. Okay.
Now, after I went through the training, the light bulb went off that this person is actually on my team and wants me to win. Before emotional intelligence training, I thought this person's trying to cut me down. Why she thinks she's better than me? Why is she always being overly critical with me? Why is she doing this? And I realized we're just two different people. She's very
Hmm.
detailed oriented. She's very linear in thought. She's an engineer by role. And so she likes data, facts, being very practical. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. So when she's telling me things, it's like, hey, you didn't do this. You left this out. You need to do that over again because it doesn't look right. Well, to your point, your earlier point, what she was saying was actually true.
Yeah.
How she delivered it wasn't always good because it was very direct. She
Right.
wasn't mad, mean, or cussing me out. She was just telling me in her way, that's her showing me love. I want you to win. So let me tell you this. And in
Hmm.
turn, that's what helped. But it only helped after I became self aware. Before then, I almost felt like we love each other, but man, I can't stand you. Now I'm like, I see you really did love me. So,
Yes. You said something. I promise I'm gonna move on to my next question here, Jay. You said something that really like spoke to me. You didn't hear what she said until you yourself became self-aware.
mm,
Then you were able to hear that. So to my community, I feel like that's like, something you need to write down. A lot of
mm,
times you can't hear the correct, the factual information because you yourself are not self-aware.
mm. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Crystal. And that is the key. Lots of times we're so concerned about other people, but remember, it wasn't about her changing, it was about me changing. And
Yes.
once I changed, it actually helped her to become more self aware. So now instead of being super direct, she's like, oh, let me just tell him this without him making him feel like he needs to do this right now. So her tone changes now when she gives me feedback. Not because she's nicer, because she was never technically mean. She was just being who she was. But now because she wants to make sure I don't take it the wrong way, she tells me the truth. She just gives it to me in a way that I can take it.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've been waiting for this part since we spoke like maybe a month ago, Jay.
Okay.
Please explain to me the clean mirror concept, something I've never heard of before.
Good. Okay. I'm excited to tell you. So, this clean mirror concept, and I call it the mastering the mirror, is a concept where it's based in self awareness. And I look at it from this viewpoint. We all have three mirrors. The first mirror I call the shadow mirror. The shadow mirror is where everybody has to face all of those hard truths. So we alluded earlier about those tendencies that we may not like all the time, those things about us that we may not feel are admirable, but that's just who we are. Facing those hard truths is the beginning of you becoming self-aware. So I call that the shadow mirror because you're actually looking at your shadow, things that you feel is a darker side of you. And number two would be the celebration mirror. One of the things, and you alluded to this too, we have a tendency when we're self-aware and think about who we are, we tend to be very critical of ourselves, overly critical. The
Yes.
celebration mirror focuses on what do you do well? What is it that you know you're really good at? What are those things? Don't try to put a value on it like, well, I'm good at this, but in comparison to what somebody else does, I'm not even thinking about what somebody else does. I'm thinking about me. What do I do well? I then begin to celebrate that and utilize those strengths more. I don't have them in place like if somebody asks. I begin to start driving and using them intentionally so that people can realize, oh, he's a very good problem solver. Oh, she communicates very well, especially in conflict. All these different things we begin to bring out and celebrate. And finally, the third mirror is called the relational mirror. And it's ironic that you talk about feedback because the relational mirror is all about feedback. How you receive others' perception of you, how you receive the feedback that other people are giving you. And the reason that mirror is so important in being self-aware is that if you're self-aware, you can take that feedback, right, wrong, and indifferent, agree with it or disagree with it in a way where it will cause you to reflect on it to see if it's really applicable to you. That's because you're self-aware. So this whole thing, the mastering the mirror, is all about you taking a look at who you are, those things you perceive as opportunities, as failures even, or things in your life that you're like, man, I'm not proud of this part of me. Also looking at facing that and saying, it doesn't define me. It is a part of me, but it doesn't define me. And now I'm going to move to the celebration mirror to say, and here's where I shine. Here's where my superpowers are. Here's the things I know I do well. And then going finally to the relational mirror where I'm receiving the feedback from those around me, from my circle, from those I work with that are telling me things that I can improve on. And I'll look at it very reflective, in a reflective manner, and I'll see if this applies to me or not and apply it as appropriate. So that's what that's about. And the reason I do this with the mirror, Crystal, is because a lot of leaders don't have a mechanism to start becoming self-aware. They're told, it's popular to be self-aware. It's the first part of the EQ model by Daniel Goleman. But the truth of the matter is, you can do this, but you got to sit down and be intentional about being self-aware, taking these looks in these long mirrors. And everything seems to be black and white, but it's not. So that's why you have to take the opportunity to get into these mirrors and then get a circle around it. I alluded before, sometimes my mirror in the bathroom, because the shower's on,
Right.
it begins to fog up.
Yes.
And I don't see clear, and I'm constantly having to wipe it. So I got to have people around me that's going to tell me, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Very objective. Not necessarily here's what I think about it, but here's what I'm seeing. Something that can be seen, measured, tasted, touched, something that can be held. That's the feedback that they're giving you, not how they feel about it. So it all works together so that you can become a more self-aware leader.
Jay, answer this question for me. What or how do you handle people whose positive mirror or creative mirror, the second mirror that you're talking about,
Hmm.
they don't accept the positive, the great things about
Hmm.
themselves. So, for example, I will tell a friend, I think you're amazing, you're smart, you're this, and then they negate it and say,
Hmm.
well, but I should do this or I could have did this, and just completely ignores the positive
Yeah.
that you are giving them, the positive feedback you're giving them. I assume, just listening to your definition of the three mirrors, that second mirror, that positive mirror
Hmm.
that you're supposed to be looking at and saying, look at all these amazing things that I
Hmm.
do. I'm
Yeah.
wonderful in this area. Either they don't look at that mirror or they don't have that mirror.
Yeah, that's a real thing too. And I'm glad you brought that up because when someone doesn't have a positive outlook on themselves, they don't even recognize their own strengths. So you can
Yes.
tell them, "Oh, you're wonderful at this," and they're like, "Yeah, it's okay."
Right.
Because lots of times they begin to compare themselves to what they see other people do or say, and so they're real small. I normally begin my whole coaching conversation with them at this point, which when coaching anybody, I arm myself with the right questions.
Okay.
So it's ironic. Okay, so you said that you don't feel great about that. Tell me more. Tell me why don't you feel great? And then they begin to tell, well, in comparison to this, and I'm like, oh, so you're measuring yourself based upon what they do? Tell me why you do that. And then they go and they keep talking, and eventually there's this moment where they realize that their greatness is their greatness, regardless. But it doesn't happen until you help them to start peeling back that onion and getting to the root cause of why you are thinking this, because it's distorted. And that's the thing. Lots of times, if you're looking in a mirror that's distorted, you don't see the right thing. Remember, we used to go back in the day. We used to go to the carnival. We used to go into this house, this playhouse,
Yes.
and all the mirrors were distorted. You were skinny, and all of a sudden you were big, you were tall and
Yes.
short. That's what life is like when you look through a distorted mirror. The thing that actually makes you strong, you look at it and think, "Oh my God, I don't like that. That's a weakness." While everybody else is going, "Oh my God, I wish I could do that like you. You're really good at that."
Yes. Oh my goodness, Jay. I promise I'm gonna start doing that. I promise, because my love language, and of course this podcast is not about love languages, but my love language is communication. So,
Mm,
maybe that's a reason I have this podcast. So I love edifying people and
mm,
bigging up people.
yes.
But then, they're just like, oh, well, no, I don't think so. Or no, like that's not what we're doing right now. But that follow up question, so
Hmm.
why do you think that way? I'm gonna start doing that
Yeah,
because
you
it's
really
turning
got
the
to.
mirror back on them.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right, man. And I've done it, and I think it's a great way to combat that. At the end of the day, I always tell them that what you have is your gift to the world. I don't think God
Yes,
made any mistakes when He made you. So
yes,
this gift that you have, you're robbing all of us when you don't shine, when you don't let us know about it. And all of a
yes,
sudden, I can see the light bulb come on. Like, I guess you're right. I'm responsible if I was given this gift to do this. And I don't know how much you read in the Bible, but one of my favorite scriptures is the ones about the three talents.
yes.
And it's about the person, how the master gave talents to three people. One he gave
Hmm.
five, one he gave two, one he gave one. And then all of a sudden, he came back, and the one who had five had doubled it. And he said, "Oh, good, thank you, you good and faithful servant. Go and inherit the kingdom of God." The one who had two got four, doubled it, 100% return. Told him the
Yes,
same thing. The one that didn't do anything, he didn't just say you missed it. He called him an evil servant.
he
You
did.
could have did something with it. And I
Yes.
believe that's what God is telling all of us. With the gifts that you have, the strengths that you have in that celebration mirror, I need you to do something with it. And
Hmm.
that should help people to get motivated. Whatever I have to give, I'm going to do it. Whatever gift I have, I'm going to share.
Right. And that servant, he was scared to lose it. He was
Scared to lose
scared that he would mess it up. So he thought, I'm just going to hold on to it, not going to do anything with it.
it.
And
Yeah,
then my master will be pleased with me when he comes back. But that's not the case at all.
not the case at all. He was looking at a distorted mirror.
He
He
was
didn't
looking.
know. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh my God, Jay. I love this podcast. You have been amazing.
Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you.
You've been amazing. Okay. Why do people seem to, and maybe it's social media,
Mhm.
but why do people, and maybe we give social media too much power and too much credit. As I'm thinking about this question I'm about to ask, why
Mhm.
do people seem to accept the bad more easily than they accept the good about themselves?
And I'll use I statements here. So these
Okay.
are my thoughts. I believe people accept the bad quicker than they accept the good
Hmm.
because accepting the bad doesn't require me to do anything. I can just sit back and accept it. Sometimes with the good, I feel like I've got to prove myself. It's again that distorted mirror.
Hmm.
So the bad, it must be bad. This is what other people are telling me. I'm not looking in the right mirror. When people are telling me there's something good about me, I'm all of a sudden struggling because maybe I grew up in a household where I didn't hear that. So now I'm thinking something must be wrong. They must not. If they only saw all of me, they only saw
Right.
part of me. So they say, if they knew everything, they wouldn't say I was that good. And not realizing, no, you're still good. Everybody is holistic. We all have great things on us and things we're not that good at. Now,
Hmm.
social media itself, to your point, well, make everybody seem to be wonderful and amazing. And when we look at that and see how amazing and wonderful everybody seems, then and we compare ourselves to that, we will always be small. And then that's why it's so dangerous. And I say this for myself. I can't look at social media all the time because it will make me feel like, oh my God, I should have $1 million. What are you
Hmm.
talking about? I should have this. I should have all these people are doing this stuff. And yet, why is it that I don't have it? I got to go back to how has God built me? What are my definitive gifts? What are the things that I'm supposed to do? What am I good at? I need to focus on that. Quit focusing on everybody else. And again, everybody else, the social media is all that distorted mirror. So that's why I would tell
Hmm.
everybody, you got to get in front of the right mirror. You're looking at the wrong mirror. And if you can do that, you'll discover just how amazing you really are.
Let's talk about the fear of messing up. Is the fear, okay, this is two questions. Does everyone have, and I normally never use absolutes. Do a lot
Mhm.
of people have this fear of, I'm just going to mess up, I'm just going to mess up? That's my first question. My second question, Jay, is that something that we are born with, or is that something that because of our environment we take on?
I think that's an excellent question, Crystal. And my experience, everybody doesn't have that fear, but you have a large population of people that do have that fear. And the people that do have that fear, it's normally based upon something that's innate, something
Mhm.
that has been a part of them for a very long time, or based upon some traumatic experience that they've had in life. So, for instance, I probably grew up. I told you how I grew up in this household, but I still, by the time I got to house, by the time I got to high school, I was pretty confident, and I had plans. I was going to do these certain things, and I was going to get married when I was 35. I was going to marry
Man,
this
you are very
supermodel.
specific.
Yeah, I was very specific with it, and lo and behold, at the age of 20, me and the lady who I was with at the time, we had a child.
Hmm.
Now, unfortunately, I had always said I would never date a single mom. I don't want to be a father to somebody else's children. And now, me and this young lady, we broke up and I ended up with a child. In turn, I'm now the person who I would not have dated.
Exactly.
This traumatic situation for me caused me to change because now I felt like I was a failure in a sense
Oh,
because I'm not
wow.
going to be able to do that whole married at 35 thing. I'm gonna go to med school. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this because now I have this child, and now I'm like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? Now I got to make sure I can't fail again. And now looking back in retrospect, I would tell you if I had the right person in my ear, I probably would have saw that as an opportunity, and I would have done so many different things differently. But I didn't. At this
Hmm.
point, now I'm just trying not to mess up again because I've already made a royal mess of things. And
Yes.
so that's kind of where a lot of people are. They'll mess up and they don't want to mess up again because they feel like I've already messed up enough. But the truth of the matter is, that's just like a paragraph in the book of who you are. But I didn't see life that way. So now, whenever I meet with people and coach with people, again, I arm myself with questions. My goal is to get you to see, well, that's what happened to you at 6. You are now 25. You're now 32. Look at where you've grown and look at the things you have done right between then and now. Should you still believe that thing that happened to you at 6? Should Jay still believe that thing that happened to him at 20, but now he's way older than 20? And I begin to question myself to make sense out of it. And once I take that approach, people normally have an aha moment. I know I did, but it took me getting around different people. I got around other people that told me, you know, your life's not over, right? You know that God still has great things for you. You know you can still go to grad school, finish undergrad, and do that. And they have a program where they actually can take care of your son while you're in class. I Once I got that in my head, I realized, oh, that was just a blip. That was a paragraph. I had flipped the page. And that helped me tremendously. Helping people to flip the page in their book is, I think, a critical skill for all of us to have. And we all need to flip that page at one time or another in our lives, because we all have something that has happened that could have went way wrong, but by grace, we're all where we are.
Okay, Jay, did you end up getting married at 35?
I ended up getting married at 28.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I ended up getting married at 28, 27, 28, something like that. And I married someone that I've been talking about her.
Right.
It just kind of worked out. And I never would have met her if I hadn't gone through the issues that I've gone through. She had gone through in her life. She was in her. She didn't live with her parents. She lived with her mom, and so she had a heart for people who had stepkids, because she had her mom remarried and all
Oh,
these different things. Her
yes.
dad remarried, and now she had stepbrothers and sisters. And she said, based upon her experience, which wasn't always good, if she had to be a stepmother, that she would be the best ever. And she saw me one day. I saw her in church, as a matter of fact. In a former life, I was a musician. And so I was playing on the stage at church, and I saw this girl walking in the back of the church with this green leather coat on. And of course, I'm looking, going, my.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, eventually we met each other and we became friends, and we fell in love and all that good stuff. But I realized I almost feel like God had ordained this, and which I'm very grateful for. So yeah, it just worked out.
That must have been some green jacket. You remember it all these years later,
I tell
26
you,
years later.
yeah, she always laughs at me when I tell her, you had a green jacket on and brown pumps. I saw that. And she's like, you so crazy. And I'm like, I won't forget it. It was what it was.
Yes. Okay. So most people say that if you learn from a mess up, then you never mess up. Do you think that that statement is true? And how can people learn from a mess up?
Yeah. So if I heard you correctly, you said most people think that if they learn from a mess up, then they won't mess up again. Is that what you were
No,
saying?
then they've never messed up in
Then
their
they
life
never mess
because
up.
they've learned from it.
Yeah. So from that perspective, I sort of agree with it. And
Okay.
so I love sports, Crystal. And so I think you either win or you learn. I never think that you lose. So in
Okay.
turn, whenever I don't win in life, I always tell people, what do I take away from this so that I can win the next time? So in that perspective, yes, I think that you can have a horrific thing happen to you, make a mistake, do all kinds of crazy stuff, and still win in the game of life, as long as you take responsibility and own your stuff and learn from it and do better. So that's my perspective on that. I even another layer to this, Crystal.
Mhm.
One of the things that I tell people is, are you spending your time in life trying? Are you really trying to win, or are you just trying not to lose? Because there's two
Because
different
there's a
kinds.
difference.
There's a difference there when you're trying not to lose versus when you're trying to win. When you're trying not to lose, you are risk averse. You don't do a lot of things that it takes for you to get to the next level. You just kind of
You just holding
you're,
that talent like the
you're
servant.
holding
You
that
just holding
talent.
that talent.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you got somebody else with these 5 talents going, oh, I'm going for it all. And the lesson for people there is, with what you have, don't compare to what you have left in life, no matter how old you are, go for it. Don't waste another day. Don't waste another moment. You owe it to the world. You owe it to God, and you owe it to yourself. So in that case, in the second part of your question, what was that again?
Well, you actually answered both of them. So I was asking, most people say that when you mess up and you learn from the mess up, then you
Yeah.
never mess up. And then the second part of that question is, how do you learn from the mess
Mm,
up?
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about feedback. And we've been talking about feedback throughout this conversation.
Mhm.
Some people can take feedback well, constructive feedback well, some people cannot. What tips do you have to help people be more open and receptive to constructive feedback?
That's a really good question. What tips do I have to help people to be more open to constructive feedback or
Yes,
feedback that may not feel great getting it?
exactly.
Um, yeah, so my first tip would be getting feedback from a trusted source
Hmm.
is always key to me. And that's why I'm big on building relationships. So whether it's in the work arena, corporate arena, or wherever, if there is someone in place who sees me enough, who's observed me enough, then I'm hoping I've built relationship with them enough that whatever feedback they give me, I can trust. It is hard for me to take feedback from someone that I don't trust. And that's just bottom line. And most leaders need to learn that because
Yes,
the absence of trust in leadership means that your people may not trust what you give them. You may tell them the truth, but because there's no relationship there,
right.
that's been built. And trust is something that happens over time, right? When you follow through in what you say and you do this over time, now I know that you are who you say you are. You stand for what you say you stand for. I can trust
Yes,
you. When you have trust in place, feedback gets easier. It's not necessarily easy, but it does allow me to at least listen to what you're saying. So establish trust first. That would be my first tip. Tip number two would be um, if someone gives you feedback, it doesn't mean you have to automatically take it. You should be armed with questions to ask them about the feedback that they're giving you. You should be armed with certain things that someone is telling me, I didn't do this process right. And then my first question is going to be, okay, so tell me exactly what were the expectations here and what did you see? How did I miss this? Okay, walk me through that again. What is it that I should have done? Okay, how would I have known that? I begin to get curious in the feedback. And what happens is now I realize, oh, it really wasn't a miss on my part, or maybe it was, but it was based upon maybe some faulty data that I had. Maybe it's based upon something outside of me. I don't know yet. So I'm not making excuses. But before I just sit here and get beat up or feel beat up, I
hmm,
need you to walk me through this. Paint the picture for me so that I can get better. Because at the end of the day, if you walk me through this, I may recognize, oh my God, you're so right. Thank you for that. Because it's never my intention to mess up. It's never my
right.
intention to do something bad. I want to win. So help me. So there's that whole concept because I want to win. I'm all for the feedback. But again, to your point, if I'm just not trying to lose, I'll just take the feedback and feel beat up on and feel like I don't have any other options. So,
Yes. Okay, I have a few more questions for you, Jay. Then I promise I'm gonna let you go. How can someone differentiate between constructive criticism and harmful criticism?
mm. How can someone differentiate between constructive criticism and harmful criticism?
Yes.
Well, I would say constructive criticism is feedback that is intended to make you better. It is
Okay.
feedback that normally will combine the things that you are doing well with the opportunistic things that you need to improve on. Constructive criticism. The other criticism, which is based upon fear, is what I feel about that criticism. In other words, I need to get you right, and you better not ever do this again. Do you know what this caused us to do? Do you know the problems that you caused? You need to get better. All of that type of stuff. That's the difference between those two things to me. One is fear based, while the other is more trust based. Constructive criticism is one to get you to, okay, let's see how we can get you even better. Here's some opportunities for you. While the other criticism is the one that is just trying to call you out, just to call you out. It's not necessarily trying to make you better. It's just making you aware that you were wrong. Two different
Mm,
leaders there. One who wants you
yes.
to grow, one who's probably self-conscious and wants to call you out so that you won't think they're as good as them, or you want to keep in your place. Fear-based. I'm trying to get you, hey, get this right because I said so. The other one is, man, I want you to win. So if you do this, you can win. That's the difference between the two for me.
Mhm. Jay, what is your intention in this space of coaching and consulting leaders with self awareness and self leadership? What is your intention?
So my intention in this space is that leaders are able to align who they are with the impact that they create.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is I want people to start playing on their strengths, but not ignoring their opportunities or what may be perceived as a weakness. I want them to be more intentional about owning who they are so that as they play in whatever space they're in, they can actually intentionally move the needle, have conversations being aware of how they already are, where it can be a benefit versus something negative that will distract from who they are. So my whole thing is, how can I align who I am to create the impact that I want to create? That is my intention to help leaders to do that because I think that's a missing element. Most leaders that I know have never gone through leadership training,
Right.
especially
They've
newer
just been
learners.
promoted.
They just got promoted. You did the skill well, so we're gonna make you the leader. And in turn, you may have been a killer at Superman at doing the skill, but because you have no leadership skills, now you're getting ready to wreck this whole ship. And they're looking at you like, hey, what happened? What are you doing? Not realizing being a leader is a whole different skill set than actually doing the widget. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to become self-aware, be aware who your people are. What is the thing that they need? Because everybody needs something different. A real good leader is able to speak to you one way and come and speak to me completely different because we're two different
Yes.
people. Most leaders don't recognize that. They just think, here are the metrics, here are your KPIs, get it done or else. And in turn, the culture that is created is one that's negative. People don't like leadership. They check out. They are quiet quits. They just end up just leaving eventually because the culture that has been created by that leader who's clueless is not a good culture.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Jay, my final question for you. Who do
Mm.
you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
I got you. I got you. There's a young man, his name is Dr. David Walker. He wrote a book here recently called The Champion's Mind. The book is a powerful book that he goes around this country speaking on it, not to schools, to students, to athletic organizations. He would be the perfect fit for this
Oh,
podcast.
thank you. I cannot wait to learn from Dr. Walker. Jay, I cannot express how amazing you have been during this conversation. I've had at least two aha light bulb turn on moments in the 52 minutes and 49, 50 seconds that you have been on my podcast. You are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
Amazing.
that.
Absolutely. To my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching and listening. You can get Jay's podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.